Hello, hello. Wasn't that lunch dreadful today again? Huh? Yes. I saw when I came out after chatting to a few of you from the last session, there were people going past me already with the dessert. So I made sure I got the dessert first, which was a great move because it was fantastic. Right. We've got a smaller, slightly more intimate gathering here of very wise human beings. The people out there are about to miss out on a very good presentation, are they not, sir? Perhaps the presentation of the entire event. Do you want to make your way up here slowly? This fellow here is Managing Director Gary Harvey of Rincon Resources. Make him welcome, everyone, please. So Rincon Resources is a copper gold explorer. They've got interests in 3 highly prospective copper and gold projects over in Western Australia. They're currently drilling at its flagship South Telfer copper gold project, where it continues to define copper gold mineralisation at the Hastings prospect. That's how far is that south? 12k south of Telfer? Where is that?
Yep, that's the crow flies, 12k.
How are you going getting people in there, getting workers in there at the moment?
It's been okay.
Yeah?
When we got access, we can get there okay. Yep.
All right, great. Well, let you take the floor. You've got 15 minutes. Let's hear how you're going to convince us to invest with you. Would you please make welcome again Gary Harvey, Rincon Resources.
Oh, thank you everyone for attending. So Rincon Resources, yes, we're a copper gold explorer. We've got 3 projects in WA, all copper gold. Our main flagship project is our South Telfer project, followed by 2 other prospective projects at Kirikara, and which is the Western Runter region of WA, and our Laverton Gold project. You can see here just a quick summary. South Telfer, 500 square kilometres of highly prospective tenure. Importantly, we cover 2 strategic, well-mineralised trends in the Telfer Western Trend and the Hastings Grace Trend. We have over 65 kilometres of prospective strike, which has been poorly explored over the last 20 years. At the moment, we have multiple drill targets along both those trends. And yeah, most of those are yet to be drilled. Our activity so far has focused on advancing the Hastings prospect. Hastings prospect is an outcropping copper gold gossan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the moment. And just in the last 6 weeks, we've completed a deep diamond hole testing a target below Hastings. That was an EIS co-funded diamond hole, and the results of that drill hole are imminent. At Kirikara, we've got 220 square kilometres of prospective strike. This is the Kirikara is the Western Runter. It's a copper IOCG play. It's a very highly prospective yet very underexplored frontier location. And we're quite fortunate again to get government co-funding for 2 deep diamond holes to test some pretty prospective IOCG targets at Pokali. And we'd like to get out there doing that sometime in the next half of this year. And finally, Laverton, this is the smaller of our projects and covers 40 square kilometres of prospective tenure in a Tier 1 gold district. We've did some drilling, air core drilling last year, 6,500 metres. We tested 4 targets preliminary. And we've got multiple new targets that we've identified from mapping, which we yet to ground truth and prioritise, but they will be tested subject to that prioritisation during the first half of next year. We'll just move on. I'm going to focus heavily on South Telfer. It is our flagship project, and it is the most prospective of all 3 projects, and certainly demands upwards of 80% of our funding, exploration funding. Some of the key highlights, first, the major highlight is the location. This is our tenure here in red, and you can see on this map, Telfer Gold Mine, world-class, Havron, Winu's a little bit further up if you're aware of Winu, but you got the Antipa resources at Waka and Minyari. This is very well endowed locations. It's a tier 1 jurisdiction, and we are very fortunate to have this strike extension covered by our tenure along this Telfer Western trend. Again, as I said, multi-million ounce, elephant-sized deposits in this region. We've got prospects and targets all within 50 kilometres of a very, very hungry Telfer gold mine. This is a very large mill, upwards of 26 million tonnes per annum feed, and I have it on first hand that in fact, it's a starving mill. So anything found within trucking distance of Telfer is highly likely to come to some sort of end in that mill for treatment. And again, just highlight, we've got 2 key trends: Telfer Western, Hastie's Grace. The Western Prospect area or the Western Prospect is defined by an 8 metres at 3.85 grams per tonne intersection. This is actually located here on this yellow dot. This is about 30 kilometres from the Telfer mill. And we're going to start doing some exploration here in the next 2 to 3 months. So since we floated in December 2000, our main target has been the Hastie's Prospect. Now, this is an outcropping copper gold system. It's made up of 2 zones. There's a Hastie's Southeast zone and a Hastie's Main zone. Hastie's Main zone is the outcropping portion. Hastie's Southeast zone is subcropping to very shallow, less than 50 metres below surface. But Hastie's Main zone at the moment, mineralisation extends for over 300 metres. It expresses itself as a gossan at the surface up to 50 metres wide. Obviously starts to narrow as we go to depth, but at the moment we've got mineralisation defined down to 150 metres, and that remains open. And a lot of our additional focus in this area will be to extend Hastie's, both those zones. We want to try and link those zones up over this. There's a 1.4 kilometres of strike so far of this mineralisation. Both this zones of mineralisation relate to an anticlinal fold hinge. This is typical Telfer style mineralisation. So not only do we know we have that style of mineralisation, we also have evidence of mineralisation analogous to what you might see at Havron and also at one of Antipa's deposits, Magnum, at depth. So there's quite a few target styles that we're looking to test. And outside of Hastie's, we've got 2 other key prospects we've identified for further work at Frenchman's and also at Currielah Hill. Currielah Hill is quite interesting. This is really defined at the moment by 200 metres of outcropping gossan, pretty similar to Hastie's. There's been very limited drilling in the past by Newcrest Mining, and we've mapped this trend that hosts this gossan over 2 kilometres of strike. And at the very end of that strike, at the southern end, there's actually anomalous copper mineralisation in an old rab hole. So that's a pretty exciting prospect for us, and we'll looking forward to testing that in the not too distant future. Again, Hastie's, just to elaborate a little bit more. We commenced RC drilling at Hastie's in the middle of last year. Most of that drilling was around the Hastie's Main zone, Hastie's Southeast zones. We had some really excellent, wide, thick intersections over 40 metres, 20 metres, 62 metres there, all +1 grams per tonne. Generally also associated with copper mineralisation. When you combine those 2 metals together, you end up with about a 1.5 to 2 gram average grade. Now, that's not a resource grade. That's just an average sort of intersection grade that we've been achieving. And that's actually quite good. When you compare those types of grades to a lot of the resources in the Paterson province, they're all very large tonne, low-grade deposits. Telfer's putting through sub half a gram material through its mill at the moment. Minyari resources are around that 1.5 to 2 grams per tonne gold equivalent. Winu's are pretty similar. Even Havron, the global resource at Havron is only 1.5 grams, albeit it does have high-grade zones. We're looking to emulate something similar. We hope that at Hastie's, with further work, we can define something of scale. That is significant tonnes. We feel that the grade is comparable, and certainly if we can find the right amount of tonnes, then we'll ultimately find a resource that will be economic. And when it's just 15 kilometres or 12 kilometres from Telfer Mill, we believe that it shouldn't be too long for a production timeline to eventually get anything going through that mill at a fairly cheap cost. Other prospects that we've identified here, just to, again at French Mince, you can see there's some of the historical intersections. So we know it's a fair bit of copper floating around. And again, at Curly Hill, we drilled one hole at Curly Hill in November last year and intersected +1 gram per tonne gold and some anomalous copper. And again, very limited. There's only 2 holes into that prospect, so we've got plenty of work to do there as well. And just recently, we drilled this deep diamond hole under Hasties. Now, this was a deep target that we identified from gradient array IP. That's some geophysical, surface geophysics, and also aeromagnetics. We identified a magnetic anomaly, which is actually turned out to be a dolerite sill. Now, this sill, these types of rocks, as I said, I mentioned before, Magnum. There's one other deposit in the area that has mineralisation associated with these doleritic sills. So we poked the hole down here to test whether we're going to get any mineralisation on the top of this fold nose here, the apex of this dolerite, and also where we think this mineralisation might trend down and intersect with that dolerite at depth. That hole was drilled at 660 metres. These are some photos from that hole. So there is mineralisation there. What grade it is, we don't know. The results are imminent. And just finally, with Telfer, just highlighting the key trends. So this is the Hasties Grace trend, and this is the Telfer Western trend. You can see here we've got a number of targets which has been identified from VTEM surveys around the historic Western intersection there. There's been no drilling effectively along this trend here, and very limited drilling here beyond Hasties, Western to the south here. We've got over 50 kilometres of strike untested at depth in our package on these 2 trends, and we'll be drilling here and here in the next 2 to 3 months with air core drilling. This is the first test of these targets, and hopefully we can identify some mineralisation that we can indeed follow up and start to drill with some deep RC and or diamond drilling in the not too distant future. Okay, the last of our 2 projects is Kirikara. This is a frontier exploration project in the West Arunta region of WA. It's quite remote, but it's really starting to gain some attention from some big players in the region. All this red here is Rio Tinto exploration. Now, that's all by 100% ownership or via joint venture. And to the east here, we've got IGO, which has been very active primarily on the Northern Territory side of the border, but they're obviously starting to creep over into Western Australia as well. We haven't yet been able to set foot out there. We're going through permitting process with the government and native title. We hope to have that process completed in probably August, I believe, and then hopefully we can get all our other access issues or logistics completed to allow us to get out there before November. Otherwise, we miss the summer season again due to cyclone and extreme heat, which doesn't leave it leaves us a short window. So we've got 2 deep diamond holes that have been EIS co-funded by the government. So that's up to $150,000 grant. And we've got 2 key targets at Pakali, which is an existing IOCG copper zone of mineralisation, which has been well known and drilled in the past by Ashburton Minerals. You can see some very nice intersections up here we want to follow up on. And again, we want to get out there and do this diamond and indeed some RC drilling to follow up this key target. Lastly, just on the project side, Laverton, a smaller gold project. We've done mapping, we've developed some targets. We've got to follow up or ground truth those targets before we prioritise those for drilling. That is a 2023 drill program in waiting. And just finally, timeline. we've got a lot of work planned for the next 6 months, so there'll be plenty of news flow. And ESG, snapshot of our corporate overview. Please come and see me at the booth if you want to have a bit more of a chat about our company. And just finally, the reasons why you should invest. And thank you. Contact me, come and talk to me. I'm available. Booth 43. Thank you.
That they all came in, they snuck in there to hear the rest of that. They heard, there is the man. Hey, we're going to change pace for a moment now, because our next speaker, take a look at him, is head of a highly successful international assassination team. It's true. They don't use traditional weapons though. They're about preserving human life. Their target, shall I stop and let you tell the details?
Oh, you're doing a
Possibly
great job.
better. This is the CEO and Managing Director of Arovella Therapeutics. It's a biotech company that's developing its invariant natural killer T cell therapy platform. It sounds really interesting. What could it mean for your investment portfolio and for humanity at large? Please make him very welcome, everyone.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It's very kind. And thank you, firstly, for putting on the event and for giving us the opportunity to speak here today. And of course, a big thank you to everybody that's in the audience giving up their time to listen to our story. So we are Arovella Therapeutics. We're a biotechnology company listed on the ASX with the ticker ALA. I'll skip over the disclaimer. And just to give you a bit more context on what really drives us as a business. So we are, as I said, a biotechnology company. We work with groundbreaking and really cutting edge therapies, mainly to cure a disease that we all know well, cancer. And we're led by a series of guiding principles. The first is we're very patient centric. They're our consumer. We're very data driven in how we make our decisions and milestone focused. We act with accountability, integrity, and honesty. And particularly for the arena of drug development, we are incredibly persistent and never give up because it is a challenging industry with a lot of knocks. And I wanted to quickly touch on some of the key points of our company before we go into the deeper dive and talk through them as we move. So for our company, we already partner with world-leading research institutes. Our main platform, the iNKT cell therapy, was licensed from Imperial College London. It's a top 10 university worldwide. And our second major asset, we licensed from the MD Anderson Cancer Centre, which is, if not the best, one of the best cancer centres globally. So with those two acquisitions, we have a platform technology that allows us to have two targets to cancer, target a range of cancers, including blood cancers and potentially solid tumours. And in terms of our team, we have a lot of experience sourcing, evaluating and acquiring new technologies, and that's something we'll continue to do to find new things that align with our strategy in the pursuit of tackling cancer. And our team is certainly world-class. The last 4 recruits are all based in North America, where a lot of the talent resides. And that's something we're going to be continuing working on moving forward, is really building out that team. And as I mentioned, we're data-driven. Good science underpins good data, and good data underpins great therapy. So that's something we take very seriously. And for all those reasons, we do see that we are set for growth. We are the only company on the ASX with an iNKT cell therapy platform. And for our second technology from MD Anderson, we're the only company in the world that's working on that particular technology. So in terms of our corporate overview, we're currently valued at about $16 million with $8.1 million cash as of the end of March this year. So we don't think that reflects A, the value of the technologies that we've got in the company, or B, the team that we've managed to build around those technologies. It was pleasing though, earlier in the year, we've had Merchant Group join our register. They are now our largest shareholder. Again, they've had success investing broadly, but also particularly in biotech. So wonderful to have them on board. And we do have a number of other small institutional and high net worth investors on the register, but always looking for more people that understand the time frame, time horizon, the risk appetite for a biotech investment, but of course the returns that can come with that. And as I said, in a word, what we're actually looking at, it's a problem that we all know well, it's cancer. And the reason we all know it well is because in 2020, there was an estimated 19.3 million cancer cases. That continues to be a leading cause of death. And of course, that for us provides the motivation to do something about it to the point where we're actually looking at cures. And for the type of therapy that we work on, they're called biologics, and that market is expected to reach about 143 billion by 2026. So again, big opportunities in terms of making a difference, but also commercial returns. And more specifically, the type of therapy that we work on, it's called a cell therapy, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And another way that they're often referred to is called CAR T. And the reason that they are so interesting and really at the leading edge right now is because we're starting to use the word cure when we talk about cancer. And so that's what I'm showing here on the right. One of the participants that was dosed with these types of therapies 10 years ago in the pioneering clinical trials is now cancer-free 10 years on. So it's remarkable that we are using that word cure in the context of this disease. And again, another example here, this is Emily Whitehead, one of the first children to take cell therapy. And again, 10 years on, she's also cancer-free. Just reiterating that we are in a wonderful position where we're now talking about this in terms of cure. So I'd just like to give you a quick overview of our pipeline of assets. So our lead asset is ALA 101. That's the technology we licensed from Imperial College. And we're using that to target a particular form of blood cancer that produce something that's called CD19. And ALA 104, which we licensed from MD Anderson Cancer Center, that we're using to target cancers called multiple myeloma, but also potentially solid tumors. Now, we also have an oral spray platform in the business where we reformulate drugs from solid dose form into oral spray. And it's pleasing to note that our most advanced product, Zolpimist, was actually the commercial launch was announced this morning. So that's exciting for the company as well and generates a little bit of cash or revenue, which is great. So I'd just like to talk more about the iNKT cell therapy platform itself. So this is the way the therapy works. We actually take a healthy donor, we take a blood sample and we isolate the immune cells. So they're the natural killers in our body that eliminate anything that's foreign. We take those cells and we actually genetically modify them. And we put something on the surface here that's called a chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR for short. And that actually is used to target those cells to find it and kill the cancer cells. And what we do then is we actually grow them up into sufficient numbers, billions. And then when a patient's actually ready to take the therapy, it can be taken out of the freezer and given to that particular patient, where the cells will go in and actually kill the cancer in that particular patient. So why we're so excited about our iNKT cell platform, as I mentioned, the original therapy was based on what we call T cells. We can actually use this to give from one healthy person to another. The other therapies rely on the use of a patient's own immune cells and their own blood, which becomes incredibly complicated from a supply chain point of view because every therapy for every patient needs to be made bespoke. So it's very cost ineffective and also prone to errors as well. In addition to that, iNKT cells are one of the most potent immune cells. Once they're activated in a body, they actually recruit other components of our immune system to fight against the cancer. And also we've got data that shows quite nicely when cancers also produce something called CD1D, that our cells and our platform performs better than the conventional cell therapies. So I'll just explain this data. It's probably a little bit different to a lot of the mining charts that we look at, but I'll go through this just high level. And what I'd like to address is two major points. The first is that for our therapy, we actually see much faster killing of the cancer. In this case, this is in a mouse model. So we do the testing in animals. So what we're looking at here is animals that have been dosed with a particular form of cancer. Anywhere you see the color, that's the cancer cells in the body. And then what we're looking at the bottom two rows is actually 3 days after the particular forms of treatment. So when we look at the second last column, we're looking at the conventional type of cell therapy that are already approved, and the ones that I mentioned have been used for those patients that are now cancer-free. If we look down after 3 days of treatment, it's very clear that the cancer still persists in those animals, and it has reduced a little bit, but not a lot. And this is our therapy in the very last column here. What we see is after 3 days, it's quite striking that the cancer has been completely eliminated. So what it tells us is that our therapy is working much faster to actively and aggressively remove those cancer cells. And so that's really important. But what we need to know is, does it actually help the animals live longer? Ultimately, we want that to translate to the humans. And so what we're looking at here, it's called a survival curve, where on the vertical axis, we've got the number of animals that are still alive, and we're looking at over time. And so again, in the orange line, that's the conventional type of therapies. And at about 90 days is about 60% of the animals still alive, versus our therapy, it's upwards of 95%. So we're getting A, faster killing, and B, we're getting better activity and long life for those particular animals. And onto our second therapy, again, just a little bit more data, just to show the technology that we licensed from MD Anderson. So this is again, it's a target that goes after a cancer called multiple myeloma. And what has been done already is this technology has been used in conventional T cells, not our platform yet. And that's what I'm showing here. So we've got 3 different versions of multiple myeloma. And what we see this is the same survival curve where we're looking at the animals that are alive and how long they're alive for. The black line in all 3 is the animals that have not been treated. And we see that between 30 and 40 days, they have all succumbed, versus the red line, which is our technology. Out to 50 and 60 days, everyone is still alive. Again, highlighting that this is a great target for us to go after. Now, we expect that when we combine it with our iNKT cell platform, for the reasons that I showed earlier, we expect it to be a better performing product. And I haven't shown it, but there's also data for this to work in lung, pancreatic, and breast cancer as well. So in terms of the next steps, major goal for both these therapies is to advance them into clinical trials as quickly as possible. To do that, we have a series of important steps. First is manufacturing of the drug for the lead candidate. Then we speak to the regulators and perform the work that they dictate that we need to. Then we get clearance to do the clinical trials before finally dosing a patient in a phase 1 clinical trial. So these trials don't require healthy volunteers. They go straight into patients to see if they're active. Also, for our second technology, we've got a little bit more work to do to confirm that we're happy with the target, combine it with our iNKT cell therapy platform before testing it in a range of cancers before defining the manufacturing strategy. And I'd just like to give you a bit of an overview on the landscape of these types of therapies, because it has been and it continues to be an enormous area of investment. And despite the headwinds that we've all seen across the small cap sector and biotech in particular, there has been some notable transactions in this field, primarily because of the promise that these technologies hold. So there's a number of multi-billion-dollar acquisitions that have taken place. What we're seeing now is a lot of strategic partnerships with large pharmaceutical companies, where even preclinical stage companies like ours are entering into billion-dollar strategic partnerships. And over the course of 2021 and 2022, we've also still seen a number of significant capital raises, again, demonstrating that there is, despite the headwinds, there's still an appetite for investment in this sector. And specifically for cell and therapies globally, we're expecting this market to reach about just under 13 billion by 2026. So more specifically, because the market is dominated by the conventional T cell therapies that I mentioned, and other types, and there's hundreds of those and hundreds of clinical trials. And this is a snapshot of the handful of companies worldwide that are working on a similar platform to ours. And all in the last 12 months, they've had varying degrees of commercial activity, but Appia raised 52 million and then entered into an $875 million partnership with Kite. And again, that's a company that's preclinical and not expected to reach clinical trials until 2023. And also Cure was acquired for $185 million total deal value. And Mink raised 40 million, currently valued at 54 million. But again, they all dwarf Arovella, valued at 16 million. And that's all US-based valuations of this side as well. So considering we've got 2 world-class technologies and a world-class team, we do expect that there's an opportunity for us to grow. And just to quickly finish on the team. So our chairman is Paul Hopper. He's got a wonderful reputation in the biotechnology sector. Myself, I have a PhD scientist by background, followed by drug development and venture capital before joining Arovella. Deborah is Chief Medical Officer of Charisma Therapeutics, a well-known cell therapy company in the US. Dr. Liz Stone is formerly an associate professor at Cornell University, now an executive partner at a well-known biotech venture capital fund in the US, MPM Capital. And our 2 latest recruits, both 15-year plus veterans of the cell therapy space, to make sure we're moving in the right direction. And I'd just like to finish there and say thanks again to the organisers and thanks everybody for your attention and for listening today. Appreciate it.
Interesting, isn't it? Really interesting. Right, we're going to change pace now. We're going back to the mining world. Specifically, we're going to the US and Colorado, where Okapi Resources recently acquired a portfolio of advanced high-grade uranium assets, including a strategic position in one of the most prolific uranium districts in the USA, the Tallahassee Creek Uranium District. Okapi's clear strategy is to become a new leader in North American carbon-free nuclear energy. How? This fellow here is going to tell us how he's going to do it. Managing Director Andrew Ferrier, would you please make him welcome, everyone?
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the introduction and thanks for listening to the story about to tell in the next 5-10 minutes. Okapi Resources, obviously an ASX-listed company, but we're very focused on the uranium space in the US and Canada. I'll go on to explain to you why it's so important to have those assets in North America over the next 2 to 3 years and explain to you the sort of the background and the tailwinds in the uranium space, both globally, but in particular what's happening in the US, which is very interesting. But effectively, we already have a portfolio of very high quality uranium assets in the US. We have some very interesting exploration properties in the Athabasca. And we actually have a gold project in New South Wales, which we're about to start drilling. I joined the company about 6 months ago. My background was in mining private equity. So I've been very focused on building the team, changing out the board, and essentially just setting the strategy of what we want to achieve with Okapi Resources. And I think that's effectively a three-pronged strategy, very focused on developing and de-risking our assets in the US, setting them up to be done properly, very high impact exploration. I think we're going to be very precise and thorough and very much prioritizing the targets we're looking for, especially in the Athabasca Basin. And then we'll continue to look at new opportunities. This company has been built over the last 6 to 9 months through doing sensible deals in the uranium space, and we'll continue to do that. Obviously, to achieve that strategy, we need the team. I joined recently. Leonard Math, who's also here as an executive director, is working alongside us. But we also, as you can see on the next slide, you see Leonard there, based in Perth. I'm based in Sydney. We recently brought on Brian Hill as a chairman. He came on a couple of months ago. Very highly credentialed mining executive, ex-COO of Newmont, one of the world's biggest gold companies. So we're actually, pretty excited to have him on board as a non-exec chairman. I recently brought on another fellow called Jim Villeneuve, who I worked with extensively in my time in the US uranium industry. He's very technical focused, has a very deep understanding of ISR projects, particularly in Wyoming, but also in the US in general. This is the corporate snapshot. Essentially, we have a market cap of $25 million. Hopefully, I'll explain to you why that makes little sense. And basically, the share register today is predominantly retail based here in Australia. Moving forward, we have set up an OTC listing in the US as our secondary listing. We think that will be a huge opportunity for us with the assets that we have. Explaining uranium to people in the US and what's happening in terms of security of supply going forward there is a very easy story to tell. And we'll be pushing that hard in the coming future. So this is just a generic map of North America, but it shows you where our assets are. Our sort of flagship asset is our Tallahassee project. We have an existing resource there of 50 million pounds of U3O8. So that's already in the US, a pretty significant resource and one that's going to be strategically interesting. We recently announced that we did expand that to 50 million pounds with the acquisition of the Hanson deposit. We also have our Maybell uranium project, which is also in Colorado in the US. Effectively, we were able to go out there and stake 470 claims, basically picked up another whole uranium district, had an existing 5 million pounds of production on it, potentially heap leach amenable to. We've got our projects in Rattler, which is in Utah. They're effectively on the LaSalle district, which historically has been an important uranium district in the US, only 80 k's away from the White Mesa Mill, which is owned by Energy Fuels, one of the biggest US uranium energy companies. And then again, we've got our Athabasca assets. Look, these are the catalysts. I'll talk about these when I touch on the project individually, but essentially we're going to have a pretty hectic couple of months coming up and sort of a lot of catalysts and news flow over the next 3 to 6 to 12 months, which we'll be getting out to the market. we're working effectively on all these assets at the same time and gearing up, obviously, to do some exploration, hopefully in the Athabasca in the next North American winter. So that's January, February, March next year, 6 months away. I think a lot of you already know the uranium space well, but basically it's been one of the most unloved sectors over the last decade. And when things are unloved, basically no money goes into them. And if no money goes into them, there's actually no exploration done, so there's no new projects. And what that means is going forward, there's a huge supply deficit looming, right? The whole uranium industry has largely been held up over the last decade since Fukushima occurred in 2012. But we're coming out that now, and there's obviously a huge amount of catalysts occurring in the uranium space. The tide and the conversation is very much changing in the uranium space. But the most important thing probably for us is what's happening in the US at the moment. So the US still has the world's biggest nuclear reactor fleet, 92 reactors, never been operated better, still accounts for about 20% of all energy consumption in the US. But what didn't seem a problem, but now is a massive problem, is that 50% of that uranium comes in via Russia. And they've actually let their entire domestic production of uranium effectively collapse to zero over the last 2 decades. So that seemed fine until, as I said, a couple of months ago. And obviously, there's been a lot of initiatives and a lot of hearsay about what's going to happen in the US uranium industry. Joe Biden, before the invasion of Ukraine, was already pumping millions of dollars into keeping the US reactor fleet ticking along. And what's happened now is recently announced he's going to pump another $4.3 billion into ensuring that there's a domestic supply of enriched uranium. Now, enriched uranium is the next stage in the process from where the mining occurs. That produces yellow cake. But obviously, if you have domestically sourced enriched uranium, you need domestically sourced yellow cake. And that's where we're sit today. And obviously, something's going to have to change in the US over the coming short period of time, where these US utilities are going to need to source locally based uranium. And we sit pretty perfectly for that. This is a bit of a snapshot of our peer comparison. I think, we've also got a big resource for our size market cap. And I think that's the key point we're trying to get across here. Obviously, not all assets are the same, more advanced, some are more developed. We're obviously based in the US, where our Tallahassee project is. Peninsula with their Lance project is also in Wyoming. And then there's other projects we've sort of in Australia and Africa that sort of have big resources, obviously at different grades, particularly the Calcrete and the African source projects. So you just need to be careful when comparing apples to apples. But I think, in a sense, this clearly shows that where we sit today makes little sense. This is a good picture of our Tallahassee project. What we have today is in the sort of the blue rectangle, for lack of a better word. We've got a 50 million pound resource there. Very strategically interesting. I think, we obviously have the objective, we're not shy about talking about it, that we want to stitch up the whole district. When previously owned under one owner, it had close to 90 million pounds, which is obviously very interesting. And I think the key point is probably shown best on the next slide. One, it probably need to point out that Kipple Creek, an Anglo gold mine, heap leach, been around for decades, isn't too far away. Colorado, at the end of the day, is very much a mining state. But what the key point is, Cyprus in the 70s and 80s here spent hundreds of millions of dollars, and that is no exaggeration. They drilled over 2,000 holes here. There's 350,000 meters of drilling. We're extremely blessed to have most of that information. Cyprus got a full-blown mine permit on the Hanson deposit, which is that deposit there, which you can see because that's where most of the drilling is. That's where the highest grades are. It's where the biggest, thickest part of the mineralization is. And they were going and putting that in production in 1980 when the uranium price fell away. So we've picked this project up. We're taking it through its technical hurdles at the moment. We've got a state permit to do more work on the project. We're in the process of lodging a permit with the county, and we continue to progress this project. But this is our flagship project, and we're pretty blessed to have it, and we'll continue to push it forward and develop the asset. While quite different, but equally interesting, these are our Athabasca assets. We acquired these projects a little less than 4 months ago and have been working very hard on them. Our sort of key priority targets that we like is our Middle Lake projects, which is out here. It's only 3 k's away from the old Clough Lake mine, which Arovella or Rhino, which they are called today, produce over 70 million pounds over a 2-decade period. So very interesting claim package there. We're also very excited about our Newnham Lake and Perch projects, which are in the northeast of the Athabasca Basin. But sort of the key strategy we had here is that all our projects, as you can see, effectively sit on the fringe of the Athabasca Basin. That allows us to drill through the unconformity into the basement rock, which is where the most recent discoveries have been in Athabasca, with relatively shallow holes. I'm talking within the first 100 to 200 meters. This is particularly important in the Athabasca when you're talking about drill costs at, $1,000 a meter. So you want to be able to hit that basement rock with relatively shallow holes, and that's what we're blessed to have. We're embarking on a summer field program here, which is more boots on the ground, prioritizing the targets. We're in the process of getting prepared to drill here, as I said, in about 6 months' time in the North American winter, when it's actually easier to get out on these projects in the winter. So there'll be a whole lot happening here in the Athabasca. This is the Rattler project we had. This is the one in Utah. This is the LaSalle district. This is essentially completely owned by Energy Fuels. We were fortunate enough to pick up the 2 sort of claims on the western fringe of the district. We announced some rock chip samples. A couple of weeks ago, we announced the vanadium assays on those rock chip samples. We're talking, percents of vanadium. Vanadium's always been a pretty important byproduct credit in this part of the world. We actually have already logged and received a permit to drill out here at Rattler. Sourcing drill rigs in the US at the moment isn't the easiest. We're sort of working our way through there, but we have the ability to drill here when we see fit. And this is obviously very interesting ground for us. This is our Maybell project. I mentioned this one's in northwestern Colorado. Basically what we went out and staked, which you can see again is in the blue. And you can see basically we're able to stitch up nearly the entire districts by just getting geos on the ground, putting effectively old school staking it. So this is sort of, I think, speaks to a little bit of our know-how about uranium in the US. When we announced the deal, what happened was, and we're hoping this would happen, is a lot of people came out and said we have a huge amount of historic information on this project, which we've actually gone out and acquired a very cheap, effective way of getting a huge amount of information. And we're just working our way through that information as we speak. But I think this project will come when we can sort of get our hands around it and get our teeth in it, will become more and more relevant to us going forward. And I know this seems like a dramatic change in pace, but we actually also have a very interesting gold project here in New South Wales, well, down south in New South Wales. Before I joined, the guys drilled this out last year. They put about 1,200 meters of RC drilling into it. It's called the Enmore Gold Project. It's in the New England Fold Belt, which is only 20 k's away from the Hillgrove mine, which is owned by Red River, which is another ASX listed company. But these guys went out and drilled 2 drill holes. Well, they drilled, not 8 or 9 drill holes, but the 2 main deep ones, drills holes 5 and 6. They drilled them in parallel. And drill hole 6 came back with 174 meters at 1.83 grams. Now, these were done inadvertently sort of down plunge into the mineralization. So it's not a true width, but anytime you have that level of continuous mineralization for surface, there's 30 meters at 3 grams in there, which is what interests me. And the last 3 meters are at 8 grams when they pulled up the drill rig. So this is a project that if you put in a standalone company would get a lot of attention. We're actually rolling out a drill rig as we speak. We've got 1,800 meters of diamond drilling planned here over the coming weeks to months. And we're pretty excited about what we think we can show the market this project to be. We're also going to get out there and drill sort of perpendicular to that drill hole 6 that you can see there, where we're also going to show the extent of the mineralization, hopefully the extent of the mineralization along strike. There's been RAB drilling done at this Sunnyside fault at surface, but they've, drilled the first 20, 30 meters. And the first time someone poked something in underneath it, they were hitting 30 meters at 3 grams. So this deserves a good, decent follow-up, and that's what we're doing. Anyway, thanks, guys. That's the company. We're also extremely busy working on our uranium assets in North America. And if you have any further questions, we're at booth 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew Ferrier, on behalf of Okapi. Up next, a brand new investment opportunity with one hell of a team behind them, a team with a huge experience, and they've got their eye on the prize. Firetail, successfully listed on the ASX in April this year, correct?
Correct.
Project spun out of Gascoyne Resources, correct?
Firefly, yep.
Yeah, and a portfolio of prospective battery minerals projects in Western Australia and here in Queensland. He's got a lot to get through. Would you please welcome Firetail Resources Executive Chairman, Brett Grosvenor. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy. Just firstly, I'd like to start to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and where we're sort of having today's conference, and also where we hold our assets in Western Australia and also in Queensland. So just a disclaimer, look, we are an early exploration company, so I need to make that very clear that we've got some historical results and we're working to develop them and move forward. So why Firetail? Look, Firetail, I think, is something a little bit different to some of the other players out there. We've got a great portfolio of diversified assets across Australia in an EV space. We've got a very, very good experienced management team and also a diversified board working on the projects. We've got a good suite of assets out there, lithium, nickel and cobalt and even copper in some of our Patterson plays. And we've got a very, very strong shareholder backing that's come out of a series of companies as these assets have come to life. So, this is a couple of snapshots from the Goldman Sachs, and I think we heard of some good positive things, and we've heard some negative things around this Saxman presentation or market report. I think the key thing for me that comes out of this is EV battery minerals, they're not cyclic, and not anyone out there has basically said anything different than we're growing, and it's going to continue to grow as we move into the next sort of 5 to 10 years or even beyond. The question is how much growth, and I think even if you look at some of the conservative figures that Goldman Sachs have put out there, there's still going to be a massive amount of growth. And when I go back and I talk to people that I've been around the lithium industry and the minerals industry over the last sort of 15 years, I talk to a lot of my peers and they think there's a massive deficit in 2030. And, and I sort of said, well, what's different this time to last time? And the fact is that the whole world is now embracing EVs. It's not just China, but the whole world is getting on board with this. And I think that's the exciting part about the space that we're operating in and the market that we're hopefully going to sell into. Snapshot on Firetail. So on any given day, I think you can fluctuate quite a bit at the moment, the share price, but we've had a great listing on around the 13th of April. We listed at 25 cents and it slowly moved our way up to about 40 cents and sat there for quite some time. And we've just dropped off recently as everything else has come off in the current marketplace. So we've got around about 7.5 million in cash and around about $800,000 or $900,000 in scrip in Foodie Resources. So we've got a good cash and scrip position on hand to develop our assets. And that leaves us at around about an EV of about 10 to 12 million, depending on sort of any given day in the market. We've only got 77 million shares on offer, very low dilution and a great base to launch from. 67% of our shareholding is top 20, and we have a very strong top 20. A lot of sort of long-term investors out of other vehicles, but we also have a cornerstone with two key players, one which is Gascoyne Resources, who we have all our lithium tenements and rights over, and the other one is a company called Jason, who's out of China, who took a cornerstone investment in the IPO. And Mr. Feng has been a great supporter and believer in the business. He stumped up a couple $1 million to put into the IPO, and he's a big investor in cattle over in China, and also has a lot of downstream cathode manufacturing. So it's seen as a very early move to get involved in some of these lithium and EV battery mineral companies as we move forward. So just a quick snapshot, I suppose, on where we came out of. A lot of these resources have come out of a company called Firefly, and around about 12 to 18 months ago, we spun out a business called Firebird, who are actually sharing the booth today. Got a manganese asset. And it was done to realise the value in these assets and develop them because they were starting to need their own sort of time and resources. So we did that. We then formed Firetail Resources, I think it was the middle of October last year. That then sat in a little bit of a holding pattern as Gascoyne and Firefly merged at the back end of last year, which took a little bit longer. We had some of the Westgold litigation that came out of that. Anyway, off the back of that being settled in the last year, we were able to successfully move forward with our IPO, which we did in April this year, and we listed Firetail in middle of April. Again, the strong management team, I won't spend too long on this. The directors here, I think, is very diversified. Myself, I have a background in building and developing projects, developed a very successful EPC and construction and engineering company that was listed, Primera, and then we later sold into NRW Group early last year. So I've sort of been in that mineral space and around lithium now for probably about 15 years. Simon Lawson's another non-exec, is the MD of Gascoyne. So there's that sort of common interest that sits across the two and wanting to see us do well on the tenements and lithium rights. Steve's been very good from a company secretary and also financial background and giving us that support. And Frank gives us the geological support and knowledge on the board to assess some of these projects. And that's backed up by a very, very strong management team. So what we've tried to do with the management team is actually put people with expertise into the areas and the locations of where we're working. And, you know, we've been able to source some people like Leon Baggis, who's done a lot of work in the Patterson and WA region. That's been great in helping the development of those assets. And Philip over here has been able to work with us on the Mount Slopaway and Queensland assets as well. So coming back to the assets we have, we've got the Yalgoo Daranga lithium project. We're starting on the Yalgoo portion of that first and then moving into Daranga in a similar region. We've got the Patterson copper gold, which is also something we're working on, more of a desktop at this stage. And the Mount Slopaway, which is an old existing inferred resource, around 4 million tonne that we're working on to prove up and move forward. So I'll start with the Yalgoo. We've got 14 licenses, concessions over that area. It's quite a large area. This is typically a historical gold region. There's a lot of gold developments. And what's happened is there's been a lot of lithium in that area and pegmatites in that area that just have never been sampled or tested for. However, there has been some samples done, and what they've shown is there's some potentially high-grade lithium and pegmatites in that area. So you'd be familiar with some other, covalent lithium that's out there. Similar type of story, like long and old gold strike, Bounty Gold, and then we're able to find lithium and develop that. So the geological formations in that area are very, very similar. So you can see some of the historical hits we've had have been quite high on the rock chip samples. We're going to be out on site, or we are out on site at the moment, doing a lot of structural analysis, geological, and also soil sampling at the moment, with the intent to come up with a comprehensive drill program in the next couple of months to start on site. Apologies. So what we're able to see from this is there's actually a pegmatite corridor through here. You can even visually see some of it, but some of the site structural works that we've been undergoing and hoping to come out with some sort of information soon is really highlighting this pegmatite through this area. So it's our job now to get out there and confirm that structural geo and start putting some holes in. Daranga is probably the next cab off the rank from this perspective. This is where the Gascoyne, the mine is sort of operating and working at this stage. So we'll be able to get onto that work quite easily and do some early structural analysis and then hopefully follow that with some drill holes. There is a lot of drilling rigs working through this area, both in Yalgoo and Duranga at the moment, so it'll give us good access to be able to work on that. Mount Slopeway is our Queensland asset that got put into the business when we did the IPO. We picked up this as probably a little bit more of an opportunistic to progress pretty quickly. This is historically I think it was a BHP in the day, put some holes in the area and basically came up with a 4 million tonne inferred nickel cobalt resource. So what we're going to be working on, and we've started working on already, is we've been on site, we've had a look at it, and we're going to look to replicate those holes. We'll put some twins in, and then we'll look to hopefully take that inferred resource up to an indicated resource in the near future. So we're well on way to make that happen. We've got a geologist in place, we've got a drill program in place, and we're just waiting for a couple of final access issues to be resolved, get some tracks in, and we're off. But we have all environmentals for that space already underway. So the final one is the Patterson Gold. This is probably a bit of the jewel in the crown, depending on who you talk to in our shareholding.
Andrew, you just stop completely for 2 seconds. I'll give you the extra time because you're keeling over backwards right now, even though we've got a number of doctors and medical specialists there who are really bad on my records. Have a really big gulp of it. Do some exercises with your throat. You don't have anything like a...
Listen to an expert.
Is there anything else we can help you with? Do you want some menthol or anything? Honey?
No, I'm all good.
All right, count you back in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Thanks, Chris. So I'll start again on the Patterson resource. This is something quite interesting up there. It's historical CRA drill holes. They are, I think they were done back in the 80s. They are probably the shallowest copper hits in that region. We saw Rincon come up. We're probably a little bit further south of to the west of Rincon. But there's some very, very highly prospective assets and in that area. So what we've been able to do over the last month is digitize around about 30,000 data points that have historically been held in a, I suppose, an analytic form. We've also been able to come up with a lot of electromagnetic historical flyover that was done by the government in 2015. We've been able to map that out and put a 3D model together, which we're very close to finishing, to help us identify some of those anomalies. But 2 to 3% copper hits at 80 meters of depth is something quite and it's a gold copper porphyry that we potentially could feed some of those other projects up in that area. So that's something quite exciting, and probably one of the sort of the third sort of phase of our projects as we move forward. And finally, we have around about a 12% equity stake in a company called Firetail Resources. They are currently developing some assets in the southern part of Western Australia. They're out, they've just received their POW, they're out looking for lithium and gold are there at the moment, and there's some potentially prospective assets there that could bring some great value back into the business. So I think going forward over this next 6 months, we're only listed, we're probably only 2 months into it. Already we're starting to get some good on the ground work, which is great. We're spending the money where it should be spent, which is in the ground, and understanding some of this historical data and what we're about. And the more important thing for us is there's a great news flow moving forward. We've got a lot of information coming off our 3 projects moving forward. We're going to know a lot more about them in this coming months, and we feel we're going to prove the historical data and show that what's there. So I suppose summary, we're in the right space. We're in a growing market. We've got a good board. We've got a great cash balance at the moment. We've got a structured approach to our development and execution of the works, and we've got great quality shareholder backing. So thanks very much.
Good on you, Brett Grosvenor. Well done. And my apologies for calling you Andrew. You didn't have enough energy to leap over and strangle me, which was a good thing. All right, we are going to change it up a little bit again. Now, part of the thing for me anyway, because a large part of our team, you've met most of us, come over here from Western Australia for all of our conferences. And for me in particular, I have 4 teenagers at home. So I have to do all the prep and everything for them because my husband's fly in, fly out in mining up in Port Hedland. So I need to make multiple meals and secure the food and make the programs and leave lists and all the rest of it. And it's a really, really big job. And I'm thinking to myself as I was preparing on Monday night, there's got to be a bit, actually, you silly, twisted woman, there is a better way of doing this. And the person who would have provided me with the answer, if I've got it my button, I'd actually got it on my computer, is coming up on the stage now. So this is a WA innovation that is taking our home state by storm. My Foodie box, it's making a real name for itself in the highly lucrative meal kit sector. It's on the verge of rapidly expanding into the food and logistics sector here on the Eastern Seaboard. The returns in this sector are huge. I've had a look at the international returns and just gone, if only. Would you please welcome my Foodie Box's amazing, driven and hugely creative CEO and co-founder, Mai Hughes. Please make her welcome, everyone.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Foodie Box. My name is Mai Hughes. I'm CEO and co-founder of the company. And before I go on, I would like to give you a brief introduction about who we are and what we do. So we're a meal kit company. We source and provide quality premium ingredients to currently WA households, but the plan is to expand nationally in the second half of this calendar year. We sit in the food tech space, and unlike some businesses in that space, we are a real business. Everything that we have built is really about being profitable and scalable. Disclaimer, if anyone fancies this. Value proposition. So before my Foodie Box, my husband and I, we used to spend basically almost every single night going to the supermarket. And on the evenings where we wouldn't go to the supermarket because we're too busy, then we would end up going to the restaurant or having takeaways, which sometimes is definitely not the most healthy option. And every night we would have the same heated debacle about what we're going to have for dinner. So by the time we decided what we were going to have for dinner, go to the supermarket, try to buy the groceries and sometimes not finding what we wanted to cook, go back home, cook, we're just exhausted. No one has time for this. And we thought, surely there's a better way of doing this than what we're currently doing. But the worst part was the amount of food we would throw away on a weekly basis. We would open the fridge and suddenly all the food that haven't been used up and is about to go bad, we would have to throw it all away. And we found the concept of a meal kit actually in France. And we thought, that's actually the perfect solution to our issue, because we realized that in order to cook healthy meals on a regular basis, it actually takes a lot of time and effort. And so what we decided to create is to basically solve the issue of first, what's for dinner, deliver to our customers always fresh produce that is completely local. We are going directly to our farmers and our producers, and everything that we provide, so in this case in WA, comes from WA. The best part is that we only spend about half an hour on average in the kitchen now. And if there are some people in this room who follow us on LinkedIn, I posted something last week about my husband cooking with my 1-year-old daughter. And it was just fantastic. They were just in the kitchen and cooking a meal for me, which was amazing. But the best part was that we didn't waste any food anymore because everything comes already pre-portioned and we don't have to worry about the quantity or anything like this. It's already done for us. And finally, also, the plastic being a big issue in the food industry, we decided to solve this problem by providing packaging that is only compostable, recyclable, or reusable. We also offer a milkman service where we deliver, when we deliver the new box, we collect the old box from our customers and then we reprocess basically all the packaging that they used. So my Foodie Box was really built on 3 core principles. The first one being a focus on provenance. The second one is about being eco-friendly, and finally, about giving a healthy and convenient offering to our customers. We currently have 23 different recipes that change every week, but we're about to increase this to 28 recipes, and I will touch on this a bit more later. So the company was really built on a love for food. Everything we do is about our love for food. So from sourcing the premium ingredients to crafting our easy to follow recipes, we are completely dedicated to providing our customers with only the very best. And this love for food is very much part of me and who I am. I've had a lifelong journey built on a passion and love for fresh produce and food. My parents opened and still operate one of Paris's first Thai restaurant, which they established in 1979. So I really grew up in that environment, gaining firsthand knowledge of food and operating a business. And since those early days in Paris, I've been working for Fortune 500 companies in luxury hotels and mainly in sales and marketing. So here we have a timeline of key milestones since our inception. We commenced full trading in January 2019 with 35 active subscribers. And in 3 short years, we have grown our active subscriber base to over 2,000. So our vision now is to expand our services and product offering, targeting an expansion into the East Coast during the second half of this calendar year. And as you can see, so we only listed in the ASX in January 2022, but since then we have already grown our active subscribers by over 24%, which is pretty good. For the financial year of 2021, we achieved sales of 3.5 million, which is a 170% increase from the previous year's sales. But most importantly, this growth in sales was achieved on a very minimal marketing spend. So we only had a budget of about $30,000 per month. So this is purely organic growth. And looking at Q3 2022, we're about to implement a very exciting growth strategy, but again, I will speak about it more at a later stage. This slide here shows the significant growth potential in Australia for online grocery sales and the meal kit sector in general. As you can see, online grocery sales, in 2021 only represented 6% of the total grocery sales, up from 4.1% in 2020. And while this is a 46% jump year on year, it highlights that at just 6% of the total grocery market, there remains a significant untapped market for my Foodie box to connect with and grow the business. I would also like to point out that the growth in the online grocery sales market is not only pandemic related. So we only currently operate in WA, and as you probably know, WA didn't have much lockdowns. So we know that it is a sustainable market. Here we have highlighted for you to see the growth across our key customer metrics for May 2022 versus May 2021. And as you can see, all the metrics have favorably increased year on year. As I said before, it was done on a very limited marketing budget last year. But it's important to highlight the growth in active subscribers that translate into the average weekly sales revenue as well. So with an average of 109,000 in weekly revenue, the unaudited annualized income is tracking at over $5.6 million per annum. And this compares to a reported annual audited revenue of 3.5 million in last financial year. So an almost doubling in revenue year on year. This graph here highlights the significant growth we have experienced since our inception in 2019. So we hit our milestone of 2,000 active subscribers in March this year. And we are well on track for achieving 4,000 active subscribers by the end of this calendar year, which will give us an estimated annualized revenue of $13 million. So the big question is, how do we attract our customers? We are utilizing various marketing channels, you can see on the table. We also have a referral program, and we're in the process of launching a loyalty program with our new e-commerce platform, which should be live around August this year. We're also in the process of building an app. Again, as I said, the marketing spend was averaging at about $30,000 per month, which is pretty much nothing. And as of last month, we have rolled out our new brand campaign with a budget of $180,000 per month. So we know there is a direct correlation between marketing spend and revenue, so we expect to see a proportional increase in revenue as well. So My Foodie Box is a subscription-based technology business. We generate our revenue primarily through the sale of our meal kits on a weekly basis. And as shown in the diagram here, we use sophisticated systems and software to drive the logistics business. Further technology is being developed as we speak, and the whole point of it is to further improve efficiency and convenience, hence the need for an app as well. And due to the business model and the technology that we have in place, there is actually very minimal inventory holdings at all times. And this means a high cash flow business with funds being automatically debited from our customers. So we have a cutoff date for all our customers to place the orders, which is Tuesday, 11:59 p.m. By that stage, we know exactly how many orders, how many boxes, how many meals we're going to deliver for that week. And we can purchase based on actual numbers, which means that on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, we actually have nothing in the warehouse, and comes Thursday, that's when everything is full and there's literally almost zero waste. The very exciting growth strategy that I was talking to before is our cornerstone investment with Magnet Investments, the parent company of Thermomix Australia, which is holding about 15% of the company, following a strategic $2 million cornerstone investment. So the national expansion of My Foodie Box is planned for later this year, and at which time we will be very excited to launch the Thermomix box to the rest of Australia. This means a massive growth opportunity for My Foodie Box when considering that over 500,000 Thermomix have been sold in Australia. So we are very excited knowing that shortly, approximately 500 highly engaged and very enthusiastic Thermomix consultants in the Perth metro area will be using the Thermomix box to further enhance their Thermomix customers' experience. It's a huge opportunity for My Foodie Box, and I can't wait to keep you updated on how this rolls out over the next coming month. We are currently in the final stage of the testing phase. So the consultants in WA have all received a complimentary box from My Foodie Box, and we expect that we should be launching the Thermomix box in the next coming month. The board, so our board is highly experienced across the hospitality, technology, and corporate sectors. Our executive chairman, Brian Hughes, who is sitting in the room as well here, is chairman of Pitcher Partners Perth and has over 30 years corporate experience. We've got non-executive director, Guy Perkins, who has over 25 years of experience in the global IT industry and brings to us a cutting edge knowledge of the IT. And remember, this is a food tech business with an emphasis on tech. And we also have non-executive director Shane Wee, who has extensive ASX experience, having worked in financial services industry for the past 28 years, and is ensuring that we are keeping the market well informed as well. Thank you. I'll go very quickly here. Feel free to read their bios, but we've got a very impressive executive team in the backgrounds, with backgrounds from Deliveroo, HelloFresh, Aussie Farmers Direct, and they're all very motivated and highly incentivized to drive results and success for the company. Peers, so as you can see, the meal kit sector has a number of competitors ranging from multinational groups to local companies such as ourselves. But in Australia, the meal kit market is still quite new. So huge opportunities in that space. Why invest? So with consumer patterns moving towards a preference for online food delivery and food groceries being a non-discretionary spend, so the second largest household expenditure item behind rent and mortgage repayments, we believe that My Foodie Box is well placed to continue its strong growth trajectory. And yeah, I can continue. 2 more minutes, sorry. 1 minute, okay. And we have deliberately designed a really highly scalable business model with very low working capital requirements. We know that our experience and success in WA has given us the blueprint for expanding into other Australian cities on the Eastern Seaboard, and this is planned for the second half of this year. And again, with a really experienced board and management team, funds in the bank to execute our strategic plan, and most of all, a true passion and love for food and fresh produce, we want to truly transform the way that Australians are cooking in the kitchen. So we hope you will join us for the ride and come and see us at the booth.
Well done, Mahus. Thank you so much. And I wish I'd thought of you on Monday afternoon. That would have made my Monday one heck of a lot more enjoyable. Right, last session before we go to our afternoon tea today. Venture Minerals. They are a successful exploration company leveraged to multiple commodities and currently targeting ESG tin production at its Mount Lindsay project, which is one of the largest underdeveloped tin projects in the world. And this is Andrew Radonjic. Andrew is Venture Minerals MD. He can discuss this emerging EV metal for us, which is more versatile than we may think. Andrew, welcome. Would you please make him welcome?
Thanks. Thank you, Chrissy. Again, just good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here again on the Gold Coast for this investment showcase. And thank you again to the Vertical Events team for holding another highly successful event. I'd like to talk to you about our flagship Mount Lindsay project. It's a critical minerals project, and the critical minerals are tin and tungsten. It's located in the northwest of Tasmania, and a bit of an update on the Chalice Mining's JV activities on our southwest project in WA. The Mount Lindsay project has already had $40 million spent on it. It's at 100,000 metres of diamond core drilling, completed an open feasibility study in 2012, and is one of the largest undeveloped tin deposits in the world. The project is located in a Tier 1 ESG jurisdiction that has already reached net zero emissions with access to renewable energy, with hydropower at a time when tin prices are near record levels, travelling around about $32,000 per tonne, which is around nearly 4 times the price of copper. Tin, unmistakably, is an EV metal, and certainly the time for tin is now. So time through the disclaimer. The Mount Lindsay project, we just commenced an underground feasibility study, and we've just collected another 10 tonnes of samples. Our focus over the next 2 years will be to go from PFS into full feasibility study, and part of that was to collect that sample. And we're looking at trying to test for a much more simpler processing route. Beyond that, also, we're looking to design a brand new underground mine completely and reduce our footprint by greater than 80%. Whilst using also electric and battery-driven equipment underground, using the hydropower that's going through our tenement and placing all our tailings and waste rock back into the mine that was previously mined over 100 years ago. We've also commenced, post the metallurgical drilling, an exploration program. There's 48 EM targets, and we're starting to drill on the Renison mine sequence, which is along strike to Australia's only tin mine, which has an endowment of about something like 500,000 tonnes of tin metal. So you can multiply that by $32,000. So we've already hit 2 new mineralised skarns. So expect some, for us, it's not really a case of if we're going to make a new discovery, but a matter of when. Chalice have been drilling some EM anomalies they've generated on the ground EM work program they did just completed recently or earlier this year. So expect results on that shortly. And the Riley Iron Ore Mine is currently under care and maintenance, waiting for obviously more favourable conditions. I won't touch about the Golden Grove, Norfolk, Coolum projects today, but certainly come to the booth and talk to me about that there. Share price, it had its ups and downs. We were trading at 16 cents on the 30th of June last year, and currently just under 3 cents. So that's why our market cap's still is well below $50 million. So there's certainly some opportunity there. A major shareholder in Republic bought back in as part of the capital raise we did with Canaccord, where we raised $10 million at Christmas time in a heavily subscribed share purchase plan. The tin price you can see is pretty strong. It's hit over $50,000 per ton. So certainly I can only see further upside for tin going forward, having attended the tin conference in Toronto just a couple of weeks ago. There's a board. The board's been here since the company started back in 2006. So hence it afforded us the opportunity to get back on this project despite a hiatus of about 8 years. Now, just having a look at the project locations, like I said, most of our advanced projects all our advanced projects in Tasmania, and more of the exploration early stage stuff's in WA. But we'll just zoom in and look at our Mount Lindsay projects. And in the northwest corner of Tasmania, I don't know how many have been down there, but there's a tremendous amount of mining history, 140 years of it. Some great mines. Rosebery, it's been going for 85 years. Savage River, Australia's only magnetite mine, has been going for well over 50 years. The King Island has just reopened, a tungsten mine. And of course, Renison Bell, which is a world-class tin asset. Even Mount Lyell just sits just off the screen sitting in this area here. So we're very fortunate. We've got a hydropower station sitting here at Reese Dam, Bastion Dam sitting here, and the power goes through and then goes into the Bass Link, which provides power to the mainland. They're looking to actually double the capacity of that over the coming years. There's a wind farm planned just sitting here. There's one sitting on the coast, Granville Harbour, and one up in the northwest coast. So we're great infrastructure, great mining history in this area for those who don't know. And I suppose to give you an example, this is mining at Mount Lindsay back in 1914. So all the people think it's a new project. They panned cassiterite up the creek. The guy found Rosebery, and they were mining this in 1914. And there was an alluvial tin field nearby at Stanley Reward. That's a pipeline that was put down 200 vertical metre drop, and they were hydraulically mining that. And that's photographs from 1911 in the local paper. Enough about the history, a little bit about tin. My Foodie, certainly the previous presenter, has got a My Foodie box, would take advantage of tin in terms of tin cans. So tin's about the third biggest use. Tin cans about the third biggest use for tin. The biggest is solder. It's all about solder. It's around about 49%. And solder is required in every aspect of electronic equipment. Your mobile phone has 4 cents of tin in it. So the tin price goes up to $100,000. It'll be 12 cents. It makes very little difference. But without tin, you will not be able to use anything electronic. Every bit of circuitry. That's what I call it, the glue that joins everything electronic. So as we talk about decarbonising the economy and electrifying everything, tin is an integral part of that. It is a critical mineral. Even though the Australian government doesn't list it, everywhere else in the world does. So it needs to be really seriously readdressed. But tin is used in solar cells, tin foil, coating copper wiring with tin to prevent corrosion. Electric vehicles will require 5 times as much tin than a fuel combustible vehicle. Energy storage, it's in the anodes of batteries, lead acid, as well as lithium ion. And certainly tin is used as a catalyst to improve the efficiencies of many things throughout our lives. 5G network's going to need a fair bit of tin. Charging stations, and if you go to Europe, you'll see how many charging stations are coming up, and that's just an eye to the future of what's going to happen here in Australia with time. So certainly, for me, I can't explain how much, but solder is a big aspect, and semiconductors to join those. There's a big shortage in the world, and there's a battle between China and US about developing manufacturing industries for semiconductors, and you need solder to stick that onto your circuit board. And the tin world, well, there is a lot of tin around in the world, but Wood Mackenzie put out a report April last year, and the biggest problem with most of the tin in the world that comes in jurisdictions like Indonesia, Southeast Asia, the DRC, South America, and most of these countries are struggling to meet ESG requirements. Mount Lindesay being located in Tasmania, in Australia, stringent permitting conditions. We permitted a mine previously, the Riley Iron Ore Mine, but certainly we're very well positioned to produce ESG compliant tin. The other component we have is a co-product of Mount Lindesay. It's tin, tungsten. Tungsten's is a critical mineral, most definitely on the list. It's required for armor plating, armor piercing. So when there's a war on, tungsten prices usually go up. It's for steel hardening. It's a very unique mineral, and like rare earths in China, it is controlled by them. They produce about 85% of the world's tungsten. So we've almost got a tungsten standalone mine ourselves. So this positions the Mount Lindesay project in terms of EV and critical very well. We've got 80,000 tonnes of tin metal in resource. We've got 3.2 million metric ton units, which is a third of the size of King Island, sitting within the same rock. And also 20% of that is magnetite. So we can produce a magnetite concentrate. Though some of those grades you see there are typical tin or tungsten mine high grade zones. We'll be focusing on the high grade shoot. There's 5 million tonnes there, running at 0.4 tin, 0.3 tungsten. And like I said, there's around about 15 to 20% of the rock is actually magnetite as well. There's a resource base. What we did in the open pit study previously, we focused on this 13 million tonnes here. The underground optimization is looking here, but I think around about $20,000 per tonne, we're looking at this number, but I suspect that our PFS will get a number somewhere in between the two. So like I said, there's 100,000 metres of drilling. 70% of this is in measured and indicated category. We don't need to do any more drilling. It's already drilled. All we're doing is updating the studies from the open pit to converting them to an underground. The high-grade concentrate we produced in that sited test back in 2014, we produced 75% tin con. This is where we combine the gravity of the high-density tin and tungsten together and separate them with electrostatic separation. So that's the test work that's going on at the moment, turning that into a flow sheet. Like I said before, the low prices of 2016 was priced around $13,000 a tonne. So you can see there's been a dramatic change. The price hasn't been below 30,000 for nearly 18 months now, and I don't expect it to be anytime soon. The tungsten price also has improved at the same time. It's over 100% or double what it was in 2016. Got many other targets as well, which I'll just touch on briefly, but certainly, we are very well located in a tier 1 tin district, as evidenced by the Renison mine, just sitting down, Renison mine sitting along strike, 12 kilometres. The Renison mine sequence comes along onto our ground. It's an obvious target for us to test. Most of our resources are sitting in this sediment package in green. As you zoom into that picture, you can see that Renison mine sequence wandering through. This is the alluvial tin field, which I showed pictures of earlier. Mount Lindesay sitting about 600 metres above sea level. This is in the valley about 300 metres below. We've got 500,000 tonne resource sitting underneath a Gossan there, running at 0.9% tin. So it'll be a nice additional sweet pit to add into the production profile. And there's the power lines, as I said before, the road. And this area here, poorly tested. And you can see from the drilling that we got scarred in the first hole at Mount Lindesay, we've hit mineralisation along strike, about 600 metres away. So we're just going to go back and follow up on these holes. So we're highly confident in getting a new tin discovery. And that's a hole, just 147 metre intersection, which we put in our metallurgical drilling. Just quickly moving on to the Julimar lookalike project, as described by our partners in Chalice. You can see we're located in this area to West Yilgarn, with the province, which has been delineated by Chalice. We're not a neurology play, we're a lookalike play. We're 300 kilometres away. They did a joint venture with us 3 months after their discovery to spend $3.7 million to earn 70%. They're about to hit stage 1, which is $1.2 million to earn 51%. And it's all pretty much about this. This is a mag image of Julimar, which obviously at one stage this company was capped at almost $3 billion. There are 10 million ounces of palladium equivalent resources sitting here. This is our feature. It looks very, very similar. You run the EM on top of that. That's all their targets. And we've got several more since then. We hit massive sulfide in 2018 looking for copper, lead, zinc. We hit copper, nickel, and cobalt. Couldn't really make a heads or tails of what we had there at the time. But obviously discovery of Julimar has shed light on what that could be. So Chalice have done the ground EM recently. And what we've come up with is a bunch of targets which are pretty close to where our plates were. So our airborne EM targets were pretty close to the ground EM, as you expect. but 3 of those targets are virtually almost up, down dip or adjacent to what we drilled before. So expect those results, like I said, in the future. Just touching on the Riley Iron Ore Mine, like I said, it's an option to the iron ore price. We can actually get up and running within a matter of weeks. We've got 5 shipments there, which we've focused on. I won't touch more on that. I'll just go straight to the highlights. But certainly for us, we're the time for tin really is now. We can see with the EV space, the critical mineral markets, with the geopolitical risk that's happening around the world. We're targeting well positioned for an ESG tin production, which is brand new mine, new generation. We'll be able to take full advantage of all the battery-driven equipment being developed for underground use. We're actively exploring in a tier 1 tin district, and obviously with Chalice, we're waiting for results from their first drilling campaign into the Southwest project. The Riley Iron Ore Mine provides a free option to the iron ore price, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Dong myself, there you go. That's enough said. Enjoy your afternoon tea. We've got a really interesting and eclectic program for the last session today. I am looking forward to it. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to the last presentation, not just I want to keep you all here to have drinks with me afterwards, but the fact that someone has invested $1 million of his own money into the company, there's something in that. So I want to hear what it is. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy. I'll call you back with a bell in 25 minutes.